than 24 hours after the official declaration, the atmosphere across Osun State remains electric. Supporters of Governor Ademola Adeleke and their court party have taken over major streets, singing and dancing in widespread jubilation.
We give the glory to Almighty Allah. Alhamdulillah. The victory recorded yesterday. The Almighty Allah did it for us. Alhamdulillah. Alhamdulillah. Almighty Allah suppressed the will of those that wanted to lord their inordinate ambition over the good people of Osun State. We give it to God.
But I thank God that Epelle win the election. Epelle in Osun State, we thank God, darkness already vanished. And Osun State right now, we are now continue to witness a lot of development.
But beyond the celebratory drums, the opposition All Progressives Congress is carefully reviewing the election outcome. In a statement issued by its Director of Media and Information, Akiyode-Afolabi, the APC calls on the police to protect its members from alleged harassment by court party loyalists. The party indicates its readiness to challenge the results, stating it will explore all legal windows permitted by the Electoral Act following consultations with its legal team, while describing the unfolding events as the beauty of democracy. Meanwhile, civil society organizations have stepped forward to deliver their post-election verdicts. During a press briefing in Osogbo, Yaga Africa and other observer groups details their field findings, highlighting crucial observations regarding the overall conduct of the governorship poll.
IREB reclaims its place as an electoral game changer. In the Osun election, IREB asserted its importance as a game changer in Nigeria's election results management. The electronic transmission and publication of polling unit results strengthened transparency, provided an additional safeguard against manipulation, and enabled citizens to independently scrutinize the results process. Independent audit mechanisms such as Yaga Africa's PRVT and ERA 2.0 further deepen this transparency by providing evidence-based verification from the polling unit through the results portal.
We observe a commendable voter turnout and general orderly conduct of the voters. The political parties were present in most of the polling units. Their agents acted according to the law and conducted themselves within the ambit of the Electoral Act.
With the ballots counted and the winner declared, the people of Osun State are now shifting their focus from the election cycle to the business of governance and the swift delivery of campaign promises. Iyitopakute, Channels Television News.
Well, we did tell you that we're getting the views of those who were on the ground. Well, one of them is still very much on the ground in Osun State. But yes, they were on the ground witnessing the people of Osun vote and also monitoring how the results were collated in the elections. We have joining us this morning Professor Akiyode-Afolabi, who is the board chair of Kimpact Development Initiative. Prof, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know you're back in Lagos. And we also have joining us also virtually, Mr. Jake Epelle of South Africa. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Epelle. I know you're still in Osun State. Did you also join in? I know that maybe I shouldn't ask that, but I'm sure you must have felt the joy of the people of Osun after the elections were conducted in the state. Was there anything, let me start with you, was there anything in particular that you were happy about as an observer?
Well, thank you for having me, Moboy. Let me do a slight, in answer to your question, a departure from the regular analysis and all that, because I've been sitting back and thinking on the real significance of Osun election, which goes beyond who won and who lost, you know, and I reflected on three things, and I can share them in a minute. Number one is how this election demonstrated that a strong personal political mandate can sometimes travel across party platforms. You remember that in 2022, Adeleke was under PDP, and suddenly he moved from PDP, which I think is his right, to Accord, and still carried that same power, political personality, which secured him the victory that he got. What is that telling Nigerians? It tells us that, sometimes an individual with political capital can go beyond what political party can offer. It doesn't really matter what logo that is on your ballot. And Adeleke has proven it, that if you have a strong political capital and the people are behind you, you can actually carry it as a brand to another. The second thing is that Osun reminded us that federal political power is influential, no doubt, but it is not omnipotent. That means despite all the mobilization, all the things that we saw, show of force, show of money, show of being able to call the presidency and the dropping of names, but it didn't really change much. However, I want to also give it to them. APC put up a very strong showing, a very strong outcome, winning 11 local government areas. That was very good, But it goes further to show that an individual political firepower can actually dislodge whatever influence that is coming from any corridor of power. Adeleke have shown it. The third thing is that the electoral outcome must not be confused with a flawless electoral process. That means we still have one or two things to deal with that should be corrected going into 2027. We saw a lot of positives on the voting, collation, citizen participation, but we also saw a couple of challenges with the beavers. Vote trading was there. Security breaches was very noticeable. And like I always said, that taking care of this security personnel is also important. Not abusing journalists that are doing their job is very important. So on a final note, I would say that Osun should be treated, it should be treated as a laboratory for 2027, not a certificate of readiness for 2027. If you allow me, when you are ready, I can tell you 5 reasons why Adeleke won this election.
Interesting. Let me quickly take the last point to Professor, because you already talked about how electoral outcome must not be confused with a flawless electoral process. And the electoral process oftentimes is what concerns political observers, those who are monitoring the polls. They want to see if the umpire is doing what it says it will do. They want to see if the stakeholders, the other stakeholders such as security agencies, law enforcement, whether they're playing their role. They want to see the enthusiasm of the citizens, their conduct at the polls. So for you, Prof, even though largely it would seem that there's been some commendation, what other areas of improvement would you be asking that we prepare for as we head into 2027? Because we've been told this is a dressing rehearsal for that.
All right. Thank you so much. I know that Osun is supposed to be a litmus test for 2027, and I want to congratulate the people of Osun, and also, most importantly, also congratulate INEC for a very good showing. I think that also, just to make this clearer, I think that what we saw in Osun was more of people speaking with their votes. And I think it's an example of what mandate protection should be about. People were as early as 6 a.m. on the queue, and they stood there until the votes were counted. In circumstances where scanning to the item was problematic, people insisted. So which means that as citizens, we must also be ready to ensure that when we vote, we also ensure that the vote actually goes to the right place. And I think that's what really helped in Osun, because if other of them had left, maybe the result would not be what we have currently. Now, let me just quickly go to the question that they have asked, but that's important. While I congratulate INEC, there are still some lapses that were seen at that election. And so, and then you ask yourself, as an off-cycle election, we should actually be much more ready, than this. Part of what we saw was also the fact that the INEC personnel, some are still not well trained. Some of the presiding officers were not very familiar, with the way Bibles is used. So we saw a little bit of something showing that they don't really have the right the right skill to be able to deal with some of the challenges that they have. So some of them have to, call technical officers and all of that. And secondly, what also came out clearly was the fact that maybe there's a need for more education to be done. And that goes into unbundling INEC. Maybe some group, maybe some institutes, the INEC Institute, should take over the aspects of education. We saw quite a number of people not knowing where to press and what to do. And I think at this point, we should be able to have trained even people who are not well learned, who are illiterate on what to do and how. So they have to rely on party agents, INEC officials to be able to cast their votes. I think INEC needs to do more around this. So there's a need. So on the issue of election violence too, I think we need to build ourselves to be able to understand more of the early warning signs, to be able to address some of the challenges. Having that youth fatalities before the election, it's not really worth it for any country. So there's a need for us to begin to see how do we build, a system whereby we can understand the early warning sign, that institutions can respond to it, whether it is police, whether it's courts, when there is an assault that is coming up. Then the rowdiness on the election day is also another issue. We shouldn't be at the face of our election. You see election materials being put in front of people's houses. So it became so clustered that you don't even know where. And I was one of the observers at one of the Liberia's election. As small as Liberia is, they had where the lines are supposed to be. They also had line officers. Maybe there's a need for us to add more to the election personnel official of INEC, line officers, people who designated work. Police were there, they don't know what to do. When even there is rowdiness, they have been informed not to interfere. So observers have been informed not to interfere. But you can see that there seems to be some kind of breakdown. So, and there seems to be nobody, responsible for, addressing those. As I think INEC should look at some of this, because when it's bigger election, when they have to concentrate on more states, this might be, an issue for the credibility of the election.
I mean, I'm listening to you and trying to get a feel, Madam, of what we should expect come 2027, like we've been noting so far. This is the final off-cycle election before the major elections next year. In your observation, and you've pointed out a few things that you think INEC needs to look at, do you think that INEC will be able to deliver for the Nigerian people a proper exercise come 2027?
Well, yes, they have enough time. They have enough time to cooperate, collaborate, partner with organizations and all of that. But, there are long-term things we need to do that can respond to 2027. But I think that we need to plan for maybe much more future election. For example, I recall that during the time of only earlier elections in Nigeria, via whiskey and all of that, the issue of transportation was responded to. Now we have to rely on NURTW, who are always factionalized organization. Yes, in Osun, we didn't really see much of that as a gap because of maybe the way INEC handled it. But we should be more futuristic. Who handles the transportation? How do they get to the outreach area? We have had situations in previous elections where vehicles going to observe election have to pick, INEC officials on the road when their vehicle, broke down. So we needed to look at things like that. How do we deal with transportation? In our show, the pads were not working. The thumping pads were not working. They had to put water and things like that. It's a very thing. It might appear something very simple, but it needs more concentration on, and it can help in terms of the efficiency of the election process itself. So there are little things that I need to focus on.
Let me take this to Mr. Jake Epelle. I'm trying to imagine Mr. Epelle during the general elections come 2027, a 3-hour pause on the IREV. I'm trying to imagine what that would do to the Nigerian people. We're still trying to understand why doesn't have to be real-time transmission. And then when it is, whenever it can transmit, it transmits based on network or whatever. And then we now have a 3-hour pause, like we had in Osun. Is that something I should probably start to think about? No pauses, because it would cause some kind of craziness across this country.
Yeah. But that would be disastrous. And Osun is a small state compared to the entire state of Nigeria. That would be something that would throw the spanners into the works. And so, what should INEC do? If I piggyback on what Professor said and in following your question, now is the time to do technological audits and invest in technological improvement. Technology is ever changing. The emerging technological breakthrough in terms of how fast technology can deliver results. So there's a need for INEC to do a technological audit, thorough audit. Some of the technological structure may be archaic. It may be, something that they need to change. There's a need for them to do that. But also, following that, there's a need for them to also do some form of technological awareness so that the people in the field will know what to do whenever there's a problem. Granted, I must give it to them, there was a fast turnaround in terms of trying to do something about some of these technological glitches, but we must get it right in 2027. Technology is one thing that would some sort of create problem even in the outcome. So they must get it right.
Sorry, just so we don't miss this, has INEC explained this pause, this 3-hour pause of the? Has there been any explanation as to why the IREV paused?
Well, I don't speak for INEC. I don't think so, but hopefully. It was part of my conversation with INEC chairman, and I must give it to INEC leadership. They were ready to communicate. The INEC chairman called me himself, and I had to pass that call to several other CSOs leaders who were around me. And then of course it's also important to underscore that the police were a bit more open. This time around.
I'm trying to find out, did he explain in the phone call, did he explain why there was a 3-hour pause on the IREV?
He did. No, we didn't discuss that particularly.
Okay.
But he did agree the need for a post-election interrogation and for him to know what, as much as people are patting him on the back and said he did well, he wants to know what he didn't do well. And I think that's an honest assessment and a way of a leader taking responsibility for lapses in a given situation. My God, I know we are running out of time. I would have really loved to talk about, because it's a signpost for other politicians to learn. My reflections on the 5 things that Adeleke did that gave him this victory. But if there's no time, we will continue to talk about the issue of INEC. But if you want me to talk about that,
try. Maybe you can give us an abridged version. If you can give us an abridged version, go ahead.
Yeah, so I'll give you a pointers to think. Number 1 is the power of incumbency and the visible performance track record that people can see. Number 2 is the personal political brand. Give it to Adeleke. He has that personal political brand. He's charismatic. He's able to communicate to the people. The third is the grassroots structure. He does have a grassroots structure that pays off. The fourth is the failure of elite endorsement. You find the former governor, the other former governor, three of them put together, their brand, their elite endorsement did not translate to result. The last thing is the highly polarized two-horse race. The problem, the race was between ADC and the race was between APC and Accord, and it sort of like made nonsense of the presence of ADC. You understand? So these are the issue. But let me leave you with this, what you will call sign by. Adeleke did not merely inherit Accord votes. He transferred his political constituency into Accord. So for me, there's a lesson every politician must learn. Somebody tried to relate what happened in Osun and River State, where I come from. Truly and really is a signal that an individual who wants to strangulate a state and political process and structure can fail if there is a credible individual who will stay the course and ensure that he interprets the mandate of the people.
Well, Prof, just so you also give us your last words as well, what would you like to hold lessons in this polls as we finally close it out and continue to do analysis of what just transpired in Osun State? You're muted.
Oh, yes. I believe I will speak more on the issue of mandate protection. I think Nigerian people are the only one who can liberate our elections and who can decide and determine who we want, to win those elections. So what this has actually shown to us is that, people can actually speak through the ballots, and that's exactly what happened. Apparently, I don't want to go into the personality, but a lot of things happened there. It was obvious that the governor of Osun State was vulnerable, and everybody saw that vulnerability. And it seems to have the sympathy of everyone, that he was vulnerable. There were violence by both parties. There were vote tradings by both parties, and both parties were apparently very strong. But what actually spoke out was, the decision, by the people, and they were able to stand, by their decision. I think in 2027, that will be my advice on Nigerians. The need for us to be able to protect the mandate, of the election. We need to begin to do things differently. I never knew that Osun State can be that, people can be that resilient, but they were out as early as 6 a.m. Let's see that as a lesson for 2027. It's what we want as people that we will get.
All right, we'll continue to analyze and take lessons from professors and observers. Thank you so much for speaking with us on Sunrise this morning. We've been speaking with Professor Akiyode-Afolabi, who is the board chair of Impact Development Initiative, KDI, as well as Mr. Jake Epelle, who is the founder of TAF Africa. Thank you both for coming on the program this morning.
Thank you, Mike. Democracy has a voice, and he spoke loudly.
All right. Here in Abuja, the people of Abuja are also speaking loudly, especially after the heavens opened up and we saw the rains that fell and took over certain places. We had never seen that. I mean, in all your years living in Abuja, you've been here far longer than I have. I've not been here small time too. I've been here for a decade.
That place where that flood happened in Wuse too is a very popular street.
Yes.
So seeing cars.
Ademola Adetokunbo.
I was like, where is this? Which suburb?
Exactly.
Where did we forget? Only for me to now see the sign for a particular bar.
Yeah.
And I know that bar.
And you know the bar.
Yeah, I know that bar. I was like, what happened? This is Adetokunbo Ademola.
Yeah.
Anyway.
The heart of Abuja. We believe that, there is work to be done in the FCT, clearing our drainages and clearing the sewages, and we hope that will not be left alone. Thank you so much for watching this morning. I'm Malfa Okun Yusuf.
A very weak and a great day ahead. I'm Kayla Magwa. Bye-bye.